Mark Epstein, the younger brother of Jeffrey Epstein by 18 months, agreed to an audio-only interview to discuss his brother's death and related matters. Mark describes growing up in a close, happy family with loving parents. Their father was a simple, quiet man content with life, while their mother was the more dominant parental figure. The parents instilled confidence and independence in their children, teaching them they could achieve whatever they wanted through their own efforts. Mark and Jeffrey were very close when younger, speaking nearly every day. However, as they got older, their lives diverged. In the 7 years before Jeffrey's death, Mark only saw him about half a dozen times. They maintained contact via phone and email, but didn't socialize in the same circles or discuss each other's business dealings in detail. Jeffrey started on Wall Street in the late 1970s when Mark says it was like the Wild West with rampant corruption. Jeffrey once told Mark that if the general public knew what was happening on Wall Street, there would be a revolution. He gave examples of brokers manipulating stock trades to benefit themselves or favored clients at others' expense. Jeffrey partnered with an attorney to go after brokers who were defrauding investors. They would reclaim money for the investors and keep 50% as their fee. Mark believes Jeffrey made significant money through smart investments, but doesn't know specifics beyond mentioning Jeffrey once owned a company that made sports helmets. When asked about the $158 million Leon Black allegedly paid Jeffrey for tax and estate planning services, Mark expresses skepticism about the official explanation, but said he lacked direct knowledge of Jeffrey's business dealings to comment further. Mark recounts that in 2006, Jeffrey called him to his New York home to inform him he was getting into trouble for being with women who were too young. This was the first Mark had heard of any issues. His initial reaction was relief that their mother, who had died 2 years prior, wasn't alive to hear the news, as it would have devastated her. When Jeffrey was arrested in July 2019, his attorneys asked Mark to put up his Florida house as part of Jeffrey's bail. Mark agreed, saying he knew Jeffrey wasn't a flight risk. For a subsequent bail appeal, Mark agreed to guarantee Jeffrey's entire bail amount, which would have been the highest in U.S. history at over $100 million. Mark expresses confusion over why Jeffrey was being charged again for crimes covered by his previous non-prosecution agreement with the federal government. He believes this was to be a key part of Jeffrey's legal defense before his death. Mark first heard of Jeffrey's death on CNN while having breakfast on August 10, 2019. He initially accepted it as suicide, thinking Jeffrey wouldn't want to face a long prison term. However, doubts emerged after the autopsy. Dr. Michael Baden, whom Mark hired to observe the autopsy, said it looked more like homicide than suicide. The initial death certificate listed the cause as pending further investigation. Mark questions how Chief Medical Examiner Barbara Sampson could rule it a suicide days later without seeing the body herself. Mark is highly skeptical of Attorney General Bill Barr's public statement that he personally viewed security footage showing no one entered Jeffrey's tier, arguing this proves nothing if the killer was already inside. He believes Barr is likely covering something up, but isn't sure for whom. Mark raises several issues that make him doubt the suicide ruling. 1. The ligature marks on Jeffrey's neck are inconsistent with the official story and more resemble injuries from a karate chop followed by strangulation. 2. Jeffrey's body showed signs of being dead for at least 2 hours before discovery, possibly much longer based on his lack of stubble. 3. The position Jeffrey's body was allegedly found in doesn't match autopsy findings or expected blood pooling patterns. 4. It's unclear why Jeffrey would kill himself just days before a bail hearing that could have released him from jail. 5. Security camera malfunctions, guards falling asleep, and other irregularities seem highly suspicious. Mark wants to know who killed his brother and why. He believes uncovering the motive will lead to identifying those responsible. Mark met Ghislaine Maxwell many times in the 1990s when she and Jeffrey became close friends. He describes her as personable and nice, recalling how she helpfully arranged nurses when his mother was hospitalized after a car accident. Mark says he had no knowledge of or reason to suspect Jeffrey was working with intelligence agencies like Mossad. When presented with various theories and allegations about Jeffrey's possible intelligence connections, Mark is skeptical, preferring to focus on verifiable facts rather than speculation. He acknowledges that if Jeffrey did have compromising information on powerful people, it could potentially be very valuable to an intelligence agency for blackmail purposes. However, he doesn't believe this fits with the Jeffrey he knew. Mark had limited knowledge of Jeffrey's social circle and business associates. He met Stephen Hoffenberg, who worked with Jeffrey in the late 1980s, a couple of times, but formed no strong impressions. Mark was unaware of claims Hoffenberg may have been a mentor figure to Jeffrey. Regarding Jeffrey's statement that he had information that could derail both Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump's 2016 presidential campaigns, Mark says Jeffrey didn't elaborate on what he knew. Mark visited Jeffrey's private island once around New Year's 2000 when Jeffrey wasn't present. He never attended any parties there or witnessed any inappropriate behavior involving underage girls. When asked about the many powerful people allegedly connected to Jeffrey, including Bill Clinton, Mark says most of Jeffrey's associates had no idea he even had a brother. He recounts surprising Clinton by mentioning he was Jeffrey's brother during an unrelated meeting. Mark explains his involvement with the Humpty Dumpty Institute, a non-governmental organization focused on issues like landmine removal. The unusual name was chosen deliberately to be memorable in the acronym-heavy world of NGOs. He clarified that while some members of Congress are listed as advisors, this was largely honorary. There are no regular meetings, and Mark never actually met people like Adam Schiff through the organization. Mark maintains he is not trying to defend his brother's alleged crimes. He accepts Jeffrey's admission of being with underage girls and says that was for lawyers to deal with. His focus is on uncovering the truth about Jeffrey's death. He doesn't believe Jeffrey fits the profile of an intelligence asset or blackmailer that some have suggested. However, Mark acknowledges there was much about Jeffrey's life and business dealings he wasn't privy to. When asked if Jeffrey might have set up a dead man's switch to release damaging information in the event of his death, Mark says he doesn't think that aligns with who Jeffrey was. But he admits it's possible there are aspects of Jeffrey he didn't know. Patrick Bet-David presses Mark on several points, suggesting he might know or suspect more than he is letting on. He argues that Mark doesn't come across as naive and seems capable of connecting dots if motivated to do so. Bet-David proposes that if Jeffrey had compromising material on powerful people, it could be extremely valuable to intelligence agencies for blackmail purposes. He suggests the lack of a formal contract wouldn't preclude such an arrangement. He also floats the idea that Jeffrey may have learned some of his alleged criminal behaviors from mentors or associates, drawing parallels to other famous criminals who were taught by others in their field.